All right, so today we're going to be talking about Chapter 6, Lesson 3. This is all about rotations. So when we rotate something, that means that it turns about some point. And we can either go into the right, which is going to be called clockwise, or we could be going to the left, which would be called counterclockwise. Now, I'm going to show you a method that's going to really help us figure this out. It's actually going to be really nice and helpful. But what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to point an arrow up for both of these. The reason why I want to do that is because as I turn my image around whatever point I'm rotating it around, the arrow is also going to be kind of rotated. So if I rotate clockwise, that means it's going to be going in this direction here. A 90-degree clockwise turn, which means my arrow is going to be pointing to the right. If I have a 180-degree rotation, that means it's going to be going in this direction, and it's going to be pointing down. And then a 270-degree rotation is going to be pointing to the left. Now with clockwise, we're going in the opposite direction, so each of these arrows is going to be pointing in the opposite direction. So instead of pointing to the right, a 90-degree counterclockwise means my arrow is pointing to the left. Now, 180 degrees still means that I'm going to be pointing down. And a 270 means I'm going to be pointing in this direction here. And this will make a little bit more sense once we start actually graphing some of these. So, example 1. It says triangle JKL has the vertices of J, 3, 1, K, 3, negative 3, and L, 0, negative 3. It says to graph and rotate the vertex J 90 degrees clockwise. Give the coordinates of triangle J prime, K prime, L prime. So the first thing we have to do is we actually have to graph this equation, or this triangle. So J is at 3, 1. So that's right here. This is going to be J. K is at 3, negative 3, so I still go to the right 3 places, but now I go down 3. So this here is K. And then L is at 0, negative 3, so that's going to be here. That's L. So my triangle looks like that. Now, we're going to use something called tracing paper. So this tracing paper is a piece of paper that if you lay it over something, you can very easily see what's underneath. So what I'm going to do, starting in a corner, so I can utilize this paper for more than just this example, I'm going to trace this triangle. And I want to label each vertex with the label that it has. So this triangle is now the same as this one. Now here's where this arrow trick comes in. So it says we're going to rotate about vertex J. So from J, which is right here, I'm going to draw an arrow up like that. And that's going to correspond with this arrow here. So now it says 90 degrees counterclockwise, which means that I want to move in this direction. And 90 degrees means instead of pointing up, I'm going to be pointing to the right. So I'm going to put my pen right on that vertex, and I'm going to spin this until my arrow is pointing to the right. Just like that. Now this is where my new triangle is. So I'm going to get a different color pen here. K should be here. So now this one is going to be labeled as K prime. J is still here. This is J prime now. And if I put this piece of paper right back on top, L is here. So now this is going to be L prime. So now my new triangle looks like this. And now if I give the coordinates of this, J prime is still at 3, 1. K prime now is back here. We're at negative 1, 1. And L prime is back 1 and up 4, so negative 1, 4. And that's how you do example 1. Using that tracing paper is going to be very, very helpful for you when you start rotating these. Now, what happens if we're actually rotating about the origin? And what this means is we're going to be having something called rotation notation. So just like in example 1, when we had translation notation, and lesson 2, when we had reflection notation, we're going to have something that's going to help us with rotations as well. So when we start looking at a 90-degree clockwise rotation, and a lot of this stuff can be figured out with graphing, and graphing is going to be the best way to actually utilize this information. But when we start graphing this, what we're going to be looking at is changing x and y. So the x here really becomes the y coordinate in our second ordered pair. And the y of our original, the pre-image, becomes the first part of the ordered pair in our image. And I know that might be a little bit confusing, but we'll do some examples. Now, 90 degrees clockwise, if you recall from the backside, is also 270 degrees counter clockwise. Same thing with 270 degrees clockwise is the same as 90 degrees counterclockwise. So let's look at another example here to kind of help us through this. So triangle ABC has vertices of A, -4, 1, B, -1, 4, and C, -2, 1. So graph the figure and its image. So first of all, let's do that. So A is at -4, 1. So here's A. B is at -1, 4, which is way up here. And C is at -2, 1. So here's C. So our triangle looks like this. I'm going to use the same piece of tracing paper. The only difference is I'm going to move it over slightly. Still tracing the triangle, labeling each of the vertexes the way they are, so I know when I rotate this where exactly the original was, so I know that that is where it's prime. Now it says to graph the figure and its image after a clockwise rotation of 180 degrees about the origin, which means that my rotation point is going to be the origin, so that's where I'm going to draw my arrow. 180 degrees counterclockwise means instead of the arrow pointing up, it's going to be pointing down. So I'm going to still do that and turn my paper, turn it until my arrow is pointing down now. So my new triangle would look like this. So now C was here, so now this is C prime. Let's get a different color. Put this back. A is here. So I'm going to use A prime. And then B prime, if we line everything up again here, just the way it should be, B prime should be here, which is this spot here. Connect those dots with my line so I can make a triangle, and there is my rotated image. Now A prime is at 4, -1. B prime is at 1, -4. And C prime is at 2, -1. All right, well, that is the end of this lesson. If you have any questions, please let me know.